In a bold and unprecedented diplomatic standoff, Mali's military-led government has struck back at the United States following a sharp visa policy hike introduced by former U.S. President Donald Trump. The U.S., under Trump's directive, recently increased visa application fees for Malian citizens to a staggering $5,000, sparking outrage across the African continent and igniting a fresh wave of anti-colonial sentiment. Trump's move, which many analysts view as a deliberate attempt to discourage African migration and assert American dominance over African nations, has drawn heavy criticism from African leaders and citizens alike. Critics argue it's another chapter in the long history of Western exploitation, where Africa is often treated as a pawn in global politics rather than an equal partner. But Mali, under the firm leadership of Colonel Assimi Goïta, has wasted no time in responding. In a statement released from Bamako, the government announced that American citizens will now pay a whopping $10,000 to obtain a visa into Mali. This countermeasure, described by many as a symbol of African resistance, marks a dramatic turning point in the continent's foreign policy stance, one that refuses to bow to Western pressure or economic intimidation. Analysts say this move could inspire other African nations to follow suit, setting the stage for a potential shift in global power dynamics between Africa and the West. Many Africans online are hailing Mali's boldness, calling it a new dawn of African dignity. Still, questions linger about the wider diplomatic implications this could have, both for U.S.-African relations and for ordinary citizens caught in the crossfire of geopolitical pride. Could this be the beginning of a broader African awakening against Western control? Or will Washington retaliate even harder? Stay tuned. This story is only just beginning. Across the African continent, something powerful is stirring, a quiet but unstoppable wave of awakening. For decades, Africa's relations with the West have been marked by dependency, control, and manipulation, dressed in the disguise of aid, partnership, and democracy. But as the world shifts and the West's grip loosens, African nations are beginning to reclaim their voice, and Mali's latest move against the United States might just be the spark that lights the flame. When Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali's military leader, responded to Donald Trump's $5,000 visa fee by doubling it to $10,000 for American citizens, it wasn't just about money. It was about pride, equality, and the principle of reciprocity. For years, African nations have been subjected to unfair treatment at embassies around the world. Humiliating visa processes, rejections without explanation, and the subtle message that African lives and aspirations are somehow less valuable. But this time, Africa is saying no more. In the past, such a move would have been considered diplomatic suicide, a small African nation daring to stand up to a superpower. Yet, in 2025, the tables are turning. Across West Africa, military-led governments in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have begun to challenge Western dominance head-on. These nations have expelled French troops, closed foreign military bases, and are now forging a new regional alliance known as the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. A coalition built on sovereignty, African cooperation, and mutual respect. Mali's response to Trump's policy reflects this larger ideological shift. It's not just about the visa fee, it's a statement of independence. It says, if you can charge us $5,000 to step into your country, we can charge you double to step into ours. It's a mirror being held up to the West, a reflection of its own policies being turned right back at it. This act has resonated deeply across Africa, where many citizens have long grown weary of Western hypocrisy. While Europe and the US preach democracy and freedom, they continue to control African economies through debt, resource exploitation, and political pressure. African leaders who refuse to comply are often sanctioned, discredited, or removed. But the new generation of African leadership, especially the military governments rising in the Sahel, seem unafraid. They are choosing sovereignty over subservience, unity over isolation. Social media has become a battlefield of opinions. On X, formerly Twitter, the hashtag #MaliResists has gone viral. Thousands of Africans from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and beyond are celebrating Mali's decision as a symbol of defiance. Memes, quotes, and fiery posts praise the move as the beginning of a continental awakening. One viral post read, "For decades they walked into Africa like kings, dictating how we live. Now, they'll pay to enter our land. The times are changing." Economists argue that such a policy could have real-world economic consequences, both positive and negative. But politically, it's already a victory for Mali. It's a declaration that Africa is no longer afraid to act on its own terms. In the backdrop of all this, Western diplomats are reportedly concerned. Some have warned that such retaliatory measures could worsen relations and hurt tourism or trade. Yet, many Africans see this as a necessary sacrifice, a short-term discomfort for long-term respect. The symbolism is powerful. For centuries, Africa was forced to beg for loans, for recognition, for fair treatment. Today, leaders like Assimi Goïta are flipping the script. The continent is beginning to act, not react. It is negotiating, not pleading. It is setting prices, not accepting them. Still, the question remains, how far can this resistance go? Will other African nations join this movement of economic and political self-assertion? Will it inspire a united front strong enough to stand against Western neo-colonial influence? What's clear is that the world is witnessing a profound shift, one where Africa is finally redefining its place in global politics. And whether the West likes it or not, this is no longer the Africa of the past. The echoes of resistance are spreading across the continent, and the world is beginning to listen. What happened in Mali after the coups of 2020-21 is not simply a change of faces at the top of state. It's a rapid reorientation of strategy, partners, and political philosophy. Since the junta consolidated power under Colonel, now General, Assimi Goïta, Bamako has pursued a set of clear, sometimes brutal, and sometimes improvisational policies designed to 1. Secure the regime, 2. Rebalance foreign influence, and 3. Reassert national sovereignty in both symbolic and hard terms. Below, I unpack the major areas of achievement and change, with concrete examples and recent developments. 1. Diplomatic realignment and the birth of a Sahel bloc. One of the most visible moves has been the region-level strategic pivot away from traditional Francophone/Western frameworks toward a Sahel-first axis. Mali, together with Burkina Faso and Niger, formed the alliance/confederation known as the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. A mutual defense, political and symbolic grouping intended to present a united front against external pressure and to coordinate security and economic policy among the coups-led states. The AES is meant to be a direct alternative to institutions that these juntas view as biased or ineffective. That pivot also presaged a formal split from ECOWAS. In early 2025, the three countries completed the formal process of leaving the Economic Community of West African States, clarifying that their cooperation will henceforth be managed largely inside the AES framework rather than through ECOWAS channels. That exit has major implications for trade, regional diplomacy, and how sanctions or mediation efforts will, or won't, be applied going forward. 2. Reciprocity as statecraft. From symbolism to policy. Bamako's recent visa bond response to Washington, the announced reciprocal $10,000 bond for U.S. tourist/business visas, must be read as the latest iteration of a longer pattern. The junta has repeatedly used reciprocity and blunt, headline-grabbing measures to signal that Mali will not accept one-sided rules imposed from abroad. These measures are at once practical, they impose cost and administrative friction on foreigners, and highly symbolic, sending a message to domestic audiences and international observers that Mali is reclaiming agency. The U.S. decision to add Mali to a visa bond pilot, which requires Malian applicants to post bond guarantees for certain non-immigrant visas, sparked the immediate reciprocal announcement. 3. Security reconfiguration, contracting, then recalibrating, mercenary assistance. Security has driven nearly every decision since the junta took control. After repeated failures by national security forces to contain insurgent violence, Bamako turned to foreign partners that were politically useful and operationally aggressive. That led to the arrival and influence of Russian private military companies, a relationship that has evolved through 2024 to 25 as Moscow rebrands and reorganizes mercenary footprints, Wagner Africa Corps/Kremlin-linked groups. The result has been an uneasy mix, some battlefield gains in targeted areas, but also concerns about human rights, competing command structures, and over-reliance on non-state actors for core defense tasks. Regional security experts are watching whether Mali's security model will stabilize the country or reconstruct chronic militancy under different sponsorship. 4. Institutional maneuvers at home. Law, politics, and the extension of power. Domestically, the junta has taken several decisive steps to cement its hold. In mid-2025, Bamako's government moved legal and constitutional levers to extend Assimi Goïta's mandate. A bill approved by the Council of Ministers would enable a multi-year, renewable term beginning in 2025. The junta has also dissolved political parties at points, postponed promised elections, and restructured the transitional charter. All moves framed publicly as stability or national dialogue, responses to security challenges, but which also shrink the political space for organized civilian opposition. These legal and institutional changes are a core reason the regime can negotiate from a position of relative strength internationally. They control the domestic levers of power. 5. Practical sovereignty. Passports, borders, and trade posture. Beyond rhetoric, Bamako has pursued measures aimed at tangible state control, issuing new biometric passports and coordinating travel documents with AES partners, restricting or renegotiating foreign bases, and asserting stricter controls over border goods and fuel flows when insurgents or neighboring governments upset supply chains. The passport/border moves are both symbolic, a statement of independent identity, and practical. They make cross-border policy coordination inside the AES easier and show that Mali can implement rules independently of old regional structures. 6. Economic adjustments and the cost of standing up. All these political and security steps have economic cost. Mali's economy still suffers from insecurity, disruptions to trade routes, and investor caution. At the same time, the junta has used tariff and visa policy as tools of diplomacy and leverage. Measures that are painful short-term but intended to force recalibration in how foreign partners treat Mali. Some domestic constituencies welcome the posture as dignity reclaimed. Others worry about the longer-term economic consequences and the possibility that external restrictions, travel bans, sanctions, reduced aid, will compound existing hardships. 7. International reactions and the space for realignment. Western capitals have largely responded with concern, travel advisories, and targeted measures, but they have also discovered the limits of leverage. France's troop presence is gone or dramatically reduced compared with the pre-coup era. Partnerships have frayed, and some Western governments are now pursuing more transactional, calibrated diplomacy rather than blanket pressure. Meanwhile, alternative partners, notably Russia and to a lesser degree China, have offered different mixes of security cooperation, infrastructure deals, or political backing that do not foreground the same democratic conditionality. That creates a real choice for Mali. Continue to lean into a sovereignty-first, non-Western axis, or reconcile with traditional partners under new terms. 8. The domestic social contract, legitimacy, propaganda, and public opinion. To maintain control, the junta has relied on narratives of anti-colonialism, sovereignty, and protection against foreign betrayal. These narratives resonate with many citizens who feel previous governments failed to protect them or sold national interest cheaply. The visa bond tit-for-tat is exactly the kind of story that plays well domestically. Framed as making foreigners pay to enter Mali after Malians suddenly face large fees to visit the US, it feeds a broader narrative of regained dignity. Social media and state messaging amplify this effect, even while critics point to repression, curbed media freedom, and economic strain as signs that the social contract is fraying for other groups. 9. What these achievements actually mean for Mali's future capacity. There is a key analytical distinction to draw. Many of the junta's actions are tactical wins. They change optics, signal resolve, and buy diplomatic room. But strategic capacity, long-term governance, resilient economy, credible rule of law, and sustainable security architecture is a different measure. For now, the junta has succeeded at building new regional friends, asserting reciprocal policies, and consolidating control at home. But it still faces high hurdles: jihadist insurgency, internal dissent, the economic squeeze of being diplomatically isolated in some quarters, and the challenge of delivering services or security across Mali's vast territory.